I'm going to ask your help to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak and is heard tonight in a respectful way. There may be a few people who are here who want to speak about issues other than AMI. If you are, and I don't know about it, please let our staff know. We can see if we can get you queued up at the beginning. As I call your name, please come up to the microphone and state your name and the address or ward for the record. I'm going to announce your name and then the next person up, and so if you can get out of your chair and sit in one of these brown chairs right next to the podium, that'll help move things up. We're going to be providing the regular 3 minutes opportunity to provide testimony to the board to present. Please conclude your comments when signaled out of fairness to others. Tonight we have a projector-based system, and I've been told it makes a sound right as it's near 3 minutes. So if you could please respect that, I'd appreciate it. And commissioners will have an opportunity to respond to testimony after public session is closed, but as a rule, or generally, we don't do back and forth dialogue with speakers. So if you have additional questions that aren't answered, please see one of our staff, and we'll be sure to capture your inquiry and get back to you. So just to reiterate, there's 2 main ground rules that will help us tonight. Speakers, please conclude your comments at 3 minutes. And out of respect for each speaker who's taken the time to attend tonight, let's make sure everyone feels welcome to express their opinions. That means we don't allow any clapping, booing, or other audible expressions of approval or disapproval. So if for any reason we can't adhere to these principles of courtesy and mutual respect, the board may be forced to call for an untimed recess, and I would appreciate your cooperation. So the public testimony period for this meeting is now open. We have about a half an inch of people interested in testifying tonight, so it's a large number. I don't have the count here. Next up is Mark Conley, followed by Alexandra Rental.
Smart leaders, I do not like being put on the defensive. Our EWEB representatives who are making this decision should be intelligent enough to recognize a bad thing and disallow it accordingly. I and we shouldn't have to be standing here telling you the obvious, nor to add drama. I do not like being forced here because you assume if I don't speak up, smart meters are okay. It's a form of extortion. You should be able to make the right decision, reject smart meters with or without me. The body of evidence is comprehensive and compelling. I believe I am speaking for the many more that would be crowding this room to overflowing if only they would have been made aware of the bad of these smart meters and your meeting tonight to decide whether or not to allow them. The only appropriate response to smart meters is complete rejection. I am instructing you as one of your many owner ratepayers to choose option 0, 10-year moratorium. Watch the documentary Take Back Your Power. Its creator, Josh Del Sol, interviewed dozens of people and companies in 4 countries and came back with an astonishing story of the evil of smart meters and the hidden movement behind them. I cannot understand why municipalities such as ours worldwide are suddenly being imposed by a seemingly secret agenda to accept and install these devices which have no benefit, do not save electricity, generate dangerously high levels of continuous pulses of electromagnetic radiation, and create dirty electricity, intrude privacy by tracking and transmitting movements and use within households, which is a violation of the 4th Amendment, and share this information with third parties without the knowledge and consent of the household. If, for insane reasons, you decide to allow smart meters, be advised that you are doing it against your owner ratepayers' wishes. The household I speak for will continuously and forever reject smart meters and will not pay an opt-out penalty. Further, you will be held civilly and criminally liable for any harm that comes to this household. I speak for the many. Be wise.
Thank you, Mark.
Please hold your laughter and your comments and your and all support in favor or against the speakers who are speaking tonight out of fairness. Alexandra, and next is Alan Rumpel.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Rumpel. I admit I'm somewhat taken aback by the previous speaker. I'm a building scientist. I study energy use in buildings. And all of my clients and collaborators in this field, many in Eugene, but not just in Eugene, Seattle, Portland, California, are deeply interested in reducing their total electricity use and especially in their peak electricity use, and are very interested in giving their communities tools with which they also can reduce, especially their peak use. And this is motivated by two primary factors. The first one is to avoid the need for acquiring additional peaking energy sources, which almost by definition would not be renewable. And a related motivation is then to facilitate the transition of electricity use to all renewable resources, given the increasingly apparent effects of climate change and the increasingly apparent dangers of fossil fuel extraction. So the sentiment in my corner of the city and in our household is very strong. We have been begging for a smart meter for quite a long time. And we are sympathetic to the fears of people who are just sincerely afraid of smart meters. And we do believe they should be given whatever opt-out options they want. But we aren't concerned about privacy. We figure the NSA has everything on us they want already. And we're quite willing to believe the research that we read that basically states that it's hard to separate out the effect of a smart meter from all the other EMF signals between radios and cell phones and all the other gadgets we manage to put around us. So we vote very strongly in favor of strong meters and in favor of time of use pricing to help us make this very important transition to renewable resources that are intermittent and that can't be just turned on and off at peak hours. And so the more you can do to help us manage our resources manage our use within renewable resources, the better off our whole community will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Up next is Alan Rempel, followed by B.K. Hoffman.
Ward 2, and I'm completely taken with the previous speaker. But as a ratepayer, I believe that my bill should reflect the cost of the electricity that I use. And electricity costs, as we all know, vary, the wholesale costs vary enormously throughout the day, with peak electricity costs being much higher than off-peak costs. So I strongly support time of use pricing, which will only be made possible if you implement smart meters. So for that reason, I would like my smart meter now.
Thank you, Alan. B.K. Hoffman, followed by Ray Wiley.
Yes, B.K. Hoffman here. The subject is smart meters. Smart meters were a poorly planned device. We have scores of websites, scientific studies, medical testimony, and also accounts from those who have lived with them. And the experiences and research have not been positive. I personally will not go into an area where smart meters are installed. I will not do business, I will not grocery shop, I will not eat out, I will not go to a place of entertainment where smart meters are present. They're dangerous. Last year, I was visiting my two granddaughters, ages 5 and 8 in Scottsdale, and I noticed they had illnesses that my daughters, when they were that age, never had and never did get. They had eye problems, thyroid problems, they were underweight. My daughter and her husband immediately had the smart meter removed. This has been poorly studied by the folks at EWEB. I don't know what's going on, but I intend to delve further into it. I would propose you choose zero option. Thank you.
you, Ms. Hoffman. Next up is Ray Wiley, followed by Carlos Nixon.
Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Ray Wiley, and I was served this community for 14 years from Bonneville Power Administration, so I have some experience in electrical energy. But 2 years ago, a man in a suit and a man in work clothes came to my door and said, "We want to change out your meter." And I said, "Well, I've had it for 45 years and it hasn't given me any problems. As far as I know, it hasn't given you any problems." And I said, "Well, we're just doing a meter change out on old houses." So anyway, I said, "Fine." So they changed my meter from an analog meter to a digital meter. So that's what I have now. I don't think that smart meters match the average life of analog meters. 45 years, that might have gone on for another 10 years, I don't know. It certainly would have gone on for another 5. It's my understanding that the smart meters have an average life of 10 years. And I don't know whether that's an accurate figure or not, but that's what I've been told. And maybe as little as 5 years. So your evaluation has not, is looking at apples and oranges, is calling them equal. We want to save jobs in Lane County. We need more jobs. We want to save those ratepayer jobs. And what I'm proposing is that we try out putting meter readers on bicycles in certain areas where it's appropriate. In my neighborhood, there's a meter reader that comes and parks his car in a central location and then walks around the neighborhood reading meters. I don't know why you couldn't do that with a bicycle. You save a lot of energy, and that's what we're all about, saving energy. So I would suggest that you take a look at that and use that in your evaluation between digital meters and smart meter, digital meters and the smart meters. So thank you for allowing me to testify today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Carlos Nixon, followed by Jack Dresser.
I don't know if this is going to be good, is that?
Yep.
I'm here tonight to talk about smart meters and ask the board to vote for a moratorium.
Can you talk into the microphone?
Well, it's so close. Okay. I'm not here to give more evidence on reasons why a moratorium is the only obvious choice. It seems to me there's already been more than a sufficiency of this. In fact, the evidence is overwhelming. I want to talk a little bit about what might be called social psychology. That is the process of decision making. Looking at the river as I arrived, I was really impressed by the strength of the current. And it's hard to imagine being in that current and moving in any other direction. Similarly, decision making in organizations has a very, very powerful momentum. Changing direction is rather like trying to change the course of a cruise ship that's maybe coming into dock, this mammoth thing that has to be very delicately aimed. It's just very difficult. There is an almost primitive part of our brains in all of us that is resistant to the feeling that someone is trying to get us to change our minds. When we're about 2, this manifests as something that's often called the terrible twos, which isn't really terrible, it's actually quite healthy in a 2-year-old. It's us learning to assert ourselves and our wills. But this impulse to resist having someone ask us to change our minds remains strong in us, and is even stronger in a group. I'd like to ask each and every one of you, well, I don't sound like a match, each and every one of you to look into your hearts, no. But I would like to ask each and every one of you to stand on the bank and not in the river, to try to find the clarity and strength to see that a moratorium is the only sensible choice, even given that EWEB has been moving towards smart meters for several years. Many board members in other public utilities are voting for moratoriums, and I ask that you also choose option 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Up next is Jack Dresser, followed by Megan Clark.
Yeah, I live out in Cedar Flats, so I am a EWEB ratepayer. I've received reviewed the 13-page September 24th memorandum distributed by Mr. Gray to the board in preparation for tonight's meeting. It almost exclusively addresses the so-called business case that was first approved over 3 years ago. Now, I'm not concerned with your business model, which in your own words, quote, focuses almost solely on hard tactical benefits and meter reading operational efficiency, meaning layoff of meter readers and servicing staff. The memorandum refers only casually and dismissively to our concerns with, quote, RF and other alleged issues raised by smart meters. Throughout its 13 pages, there are only 10 lines of reference to these alleged issues, which reflect no more than token, minimally obligatory attention, but no serious consideration given by the board to any of these concerns. There is no mention of RF radiation and DNA damage. The words World Health Organization or American Academy of Environmental Medicine do not appear. There is no mention of vulnerability to hacking and statements by cybersecurity experts that the smart meter and grid technology cannot be secured. There is no mention of privacy invasion, violating our Fourth Amendment protections, and the statement by CIA Director David Petraeus that the government is likely to use smart meters to spy on American citizens. There is no mention of the lawsuits proliferating worldwide against RF transmitting technology, including 2 large smart meter class action lawsuits in California against Southern California Edison and Pacific Gas and Electric, charging fraud and deceit, negligence, and product liability. The potentially ruinous cost of these probable lawsuits is not included in your cost projections. We, owner, ratepayer, and future courts will clearly see from your paper trail that EWEB has failed in its fiduciary and due diligence duties to fully inform and protect the rights of the public it serves, exposing EWEB and the resources of its owner ratepayers to similar litigation and its costs. The questions of biological harm, compromised security, Fourth Amendment violations of privacy, and financial liability will be decided in future courtrooms should you recklessly proceed with this ill-advised project. And the opt-in alternative solves some of these problems, but by no means all of them.
Thank you, Jack. Next up is Megan Clark, followed by Mariah Leone.
I read the advanced metering infrastructure statement of principles on your website and was pleased to see how closely you were listening to the concerns expressed by your customers. Regarding the principle, minimize RF, it reads, minimize the number and duration of radio frequency, RF, transmissions wherever feasible without compromising the objectives of the project. Make information about smart meter transmission frequency, duration, and strength available to the public. This is a very good start. And for me to sign on to it, I need to know more specifically what you're proposing to do. A general statement this vague does not allay my fears, especially a phrase such as wherever feasible without compromising the objectives of the project. My health concerns are not going to go away so easily. You will need to deal with my concerns and the concerns of others. I recommend that you get with your engineers and see what they're coming up with that will do no harm. And let the public know so that trust is restored. Eugene is a community which, for better or worse, is highly educated. As such, we require more information from our leaders. We know you can do a better job of picking an AMI program than other communities because we know from past experience that you are very careful to protect your customers. I have seen you listen to our local medical experts and mull it over, searching for ways to implement a program that won't bombard us with networking radio frequencies. That is to your credit. I look forward to hearing more specifics as we hear that you have means of addressing the health concerns that have been raised. You will find the public support that you need to proceed with the technology you desire for our future needs. Let us know what your engineers recommend, and it's likely that the public will calm down, go away, and ignore you once again.
Thank you, Megan. Next up is Mariah Leon, followed by Mindy Stone. Mindy, if you could please take the seat up next to the podium.
Thank you. My name is Mariah Learn. I live at 1925 Broadview Street, and I want to make it clear to the board tonight that I do not want smart meters installed on my property. I am deeply concerned with the surveillance potential and surveillance intentions of these meters. As our household appliances and electronic devices are progressively replaced with new units designed to communicate with the meters, our household activities will become visible and profiled by EWEB and anyone else who gains access to this data. Whether I favor the stove or the microwave, what time we go to bed, get up, and shower. Are we away from home? How often? How regularly? And when? And how long? Do we watch TV? And when? And what programs? How many computers and what type we use? What appliances have and haven't been replaced with the new, so-called smart varieties? According to hacking experts, these data cannot be secured. They can be sold to marketers. They can be stolen by tech-savvy criminals. And most threateningly, they can be provided to or taken by government agencies in violation of our Fourth Amendment protections against search and seizure without court authorization. Director of the CIA, General David Petraeus, stated that smart meters will allow the government to spy on its citizens, and it will undoubtedly do so. I deeply honor the courageous risks and sacrifices of Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden. We must honor their sacrifices by heeding their warnings about a surveillance state out of our control. Smart meters are a powerful potential instrument of that state that would allow not only surveillance, but control of our central power supplies. Communications could be shut down at any time. If we expect to retain any hope of a free society, we must never allow this. Option 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah. Next up is Mindy Stone, followed by Chandela Costello.
Hello. Hi, my name is Mindy Stone, and I'm in an awkward situation here because I am not a resident of Eugene. I'm actually from, I've been living off and on in Oakland, California for a few years, and I'm really sick and tired of living in the rat race. And one of the issues that concerns me is having a surveillance state coming down on me in the city of Oakland, including smart meters, which were installed in the last 2 years, and they have been a disaster, raising rates. People have found their utility bills to be off the dial when they know that they're not using their utilities. It's certainly not increased it since having the new meter put on. I'm very concerned about security, which is why I'm ready to leave the surveillance of that city. It's very scary. I've been trying to get Domain Awareness Center, a new surveillance program, stopped in Oakland, and sadly, the people don't show up to city council meetings, unlike here, where I see that this community really does care about their privacy and their rights under the Fourth Amendment. So I'm curious as to how the EWEB is going to guarantee that these meters will not be hacked into, as some people have stated. Also, I don't see how people can have their homes monitored with these devices and have their rights protected under the Fourth Amendment. More than 50 municipalities in California have banned them, and we've had people up in Marin actually get arrested because they refuse to have smart meters installed on their homes. And I don't think the people of Eugene want that to happen here. How do I manage my electricity use? I turn off my appliances so I don't cause outages on peak times. And I think that people are very intelligent here in Eugene, and they know how to reduce their electric use and are willing to do that. But I mean, to remove their analog system with a smart meter is really a dumb move. And I'm hoping that you will make the decision to not do that, and instead that you will opt for option 0 and wait until the verdict is out on these devices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Next up, Shandaya Castillo.
Yes, good evening. I live north of Marcola and have had a smart meter now for several years, and I feel moved to tell you the health effects that I've experienced with that. Up until February this year, I had no idea about all the problems that could happen. When I found out about the radio frequency excess, I put in a filter, and since then I've experienced some health improvement. What I noticed first was that I had great difficulty sleeping, and this went on for several years, and that interfered with my job, my relationship some. And also I experienced a lot of fatigue. And the other thing that I experienced was a lot of brain fog. And I was taking some nutritionals because I thought I was coming down with Alzheimer's a little bit too soon. So in the meantime, I've been educating myself about this, and one of my greatest concerns is that the most vulnerable population is the young people, pregnant women, pregnant mothers, babies, and old people. And it's been shown that these radio frequencies can cause problems with autism, and autism has been rising at an alarming rate. And I just want our children in school and our children to grow up to be healthy and strong, and I want our old people to be able to enjoy their mental capacity. And so I just thought I'd better speak up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Shandaya. Next up is Jim Stock. Jim, could you pronounce your last name for me, Jim? Stoffer?
Stoffer, yes.
I got it. And then next up after that is Dave Logos.
I am Jim Stoffer. I live in Ward 7. I'd like to speak just briefly to the safety issues. My background is, I worked about 15 years in wireless telecommunication industry, and about a dozen years before that in military radar. It's been my experience that a lot of industries don't deploy the best technology, they deploy the most profitable technology. And there are some companies that evaluate the technology, they look at all their options, and if the most attractive option might result in a few liability lawsuits, they do a cost-benefit analysis, and if that fits the model, that's what they go with anyway. So I have a bit of a distrust for industries who pursue profit over safety and things like that. The possible ill effects from exposure to EMF is very complicated. It involves power, frequency, energy density, a whole bunch of variables. And I've listened to like both sides of this argument, and I hear a lot of hype on one side, and I hear a lot of denial on the other side, and it sort of just leaves me wondering and not convinced that the issues of safety have been fully resolved and fully understood. In spite of that, we're now embarking on the deployment of a smart grid system across the entire nation. And this will be an infrastructure that carries us into the next century. And I agree with the intent of the smart grid. I think it's a great idea, the benefits from it are certainly something we need, but it has to be done right. We can't, there's too many examples of cheap but profitable technology resulting in companies internalizing profits and externalizing the cost on society. And we don't want to make that mistake, and we don't want to be stuck with a bunch of expensive infrastructure that some years down the road, it turns out we have to do a lot of replacements, a lot of updating to bring it up to perhaps new safety standards that have evolved. And given that there's a growing number of municipalities who looked at this and decided to put the decision off for a while, my comment to you is just that be real sure that you've got all the information you need before you make this decision. And if it means putting this decision off for a while, I wouldn't have any problem with that. So I just request you all to be very cautious on this.
Thank you, Jim. Next up to testify is Dave Legis, followed by Kathy King. Did I get your name pronounced right, Dave?
I'll pass.
Dave, you'll pass. Kathy King, followed by Barb Shaw.
You heard ratepayer owner views cautioning you as public stewards not to undertake an experimental technology rife with numerous controversies, not the least of which is pending litigation in several countries. Where EWEB went wrong was in not following primary advice on how to matriculate the smart meter campaign by setting up a citizen advisory committee, which staff in email they thought was a good idea to me. Good Company's triple bottom line report dated August 2011 recommended focus groups and gave the impression that there would be an ongoing public involvement process. But only one focus group involving the public was held, and no ongoing attempt to involve the broad intellectual and experiential skills of our unique community in doing a discovery. None of that was in evidence, the sine qua non for major public policy undertakings. Quote the executive summary, any AMI strategy will succeed only if it engages the community as a whole. Eugene is known for a high bar of public involvement, but AMI elsewhere has suffered when they have failed to engage the public. And a careful and open approach will reap both goodwill and an energy future worth aspiring to. Page 4 Good Company recommends conducting focus groups, yet the outreach that was done did not allow public input by the increasingly educated wanting to be more involved, not only in discovery, but in the display of info on EWEB's website. Another problem of which new board members should be aware is Good Company's report did not investigate increasing smart meter moratoriums and controversies that had surfaced by August 2011 in California and elsewhere. As a result, the board did not receive an analysis that was accurate of the emerging controversies like fraud by the utilities misrepresenting the signal emissions and effects, fires and explosions, privacy, Fourth Amendment violations, cyber grid concerns, etc. The report should have been updated in 12 and 13, but was not. Instead, staff often assumed a supercilious attitude toward the public, marginalizing responsible citizens. I won't read the quote by Jefferson, but basically, exercise the control with the wholesome discretion. The remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion. The tragedy of EWEB Commons is that management and staff neglected to involve the public sufficiently. So it has experienced and will continue to experience a huge backlash if AMI options 1 or 2 is approved. Finally, I want to say the ads that were in the paper were paid for by a person that called me, used to be in public office. He said these people do not understand the medical consequences and health issues. And he also said he would help with the petition campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Up next is Barb Shaw, followed by Mark Rabinowitz.
I'm Barbara Shaw. I live in the 34th and Willamette. I have a background in physiology and later in life became an energy efficiency wad, so to speak. So I'm really intrigued with smart meters. I think the concept is really great. I think this planet needs all the energy conservation technology that it can get. But I'm not convinced as a physiologist that we have the best option yet. And I think it makes a lot of sense for EWEB, given the liability issues, for all of the options to be looked at very, very carefully, to the medical research to be looked at very, very carefully, to find out what problems have existed in other communities, to take seriously the concerns of people in this community. And that having been said, if you would like to create an opt-in program where I could see some benefit to myself, I have a scientific mind, and I would love to know how much I'm using at various times and use that information to cut my energy use. And I think some other people would too. And opt-in program is probably your best method for testing the whole thing. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Barb. Up next, Mark Rabinowitz, followed by Paul Dart. Paul, could you please take the seat next to the podium?
A couple of years ago, the EWEB board voted 4-1 for the contract with the Seneca Timber Company incinerator. We were told certain levels of pollution would come from this, and now Seneca has asked the local air pollution authority for an increase in how much they can legally emit. You're talking about wanting to reduce electricity use, yet nobody on any side is talking about how electricity consumption in the United States peaked 6 years ago and has dropped about 10% since 2007. Not because of smart meters, not because of people concerned about climate change, but because the price of fuel has gone up and the limitations on fuel availability are starting to kick in. Coal peaked in 1999 in the United States. In Pennsylvania, where it started, it peaked in 1920. Natural gas, which also is a major part of the electric grid, peaked conventionally in 1973 in the United States. We're importing half of Canada's natural gas supply. It's a little colder there than it is here. Traffic for cars, all energy use, aviation, all peaked in 2007. What does this have to do with all of this? Well, smart meters are a great way. You can turn off houses, neighborhoods, rolling blackouts if there's not enough to go around. Fracking for natural gas is starting to peak all over the country, with the possible exception of Pennsylvania and the Marcellus. And as the fuel sources for the grid go away, we're going to see major stability problems with the grid. Now, I bought my first solar panel in 1990. I was concerned about nuclear power since the 1979 partial meltdown at 3 Long Island. But smart meters really have nothing to do with solar power. Solar power is so tiny as a percentage of the electric grid, it's a rounding error, basically, and probably will remain so. This is about surveillance. It's about what David Petraeus called the Internet of Things. Do a web search on that, Internet of Things. It's about monitoring everything that everybody does all the time. The Electronic Frontier Foundation at EFF.org has a nice collection of material on this, as does EPIC.org, EPIC.org, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, also in California. And I would love to see the tens of millions that are planned for this be used instead for a solar hot water factory in Eugene that would have lots of jobs, and you could start retrofitting rooftops. And if people are really concerned about electricity overuse, get rid of your clothes dryer. Have a clothesline. I got rid of my clothes dryer 15 years ago. I don't miss it. Put it next to your heater. Put it in your roof, in your attic if you have one. Put it outside in the summer when it's sunny. You'll save more electricity than you would with these things.
Thanks, Mark. Next up, Paul Bard, then Kathy Carnes.
Dr. Cordes and I are presenting our comments of the Medical Advisory Group on the Statement of Principles for the AMI project. We're not speaking in support of the AMI project specifically. We do have concerns about health issues with that. But if EWEB does go forward with AMI, we're strongly in support of the adoption of the principle of minimizing RF in the design and execution of this project. We've been discussing health risks of RF with EWEB for some time. And we're encouraged that this is being placed in your AMI as a principle in your AMI proposal. It makes us think that in some ways you've been listening to us, you've been hearing us, and we appreciate that. There's a lot of concern about this in the community, and the minimizing RF principle is a very general statement. So that principle will need to be applied as rigorously as possible, and I think it will be difficult to reassure the public until they have some idea of what EWEB is actually planning. And of course, it'll be difficult for the engineers to tell them until you tell them to do it. So it's going to be a while before that calms down, if it does. From our perspective, a smart AMI design would follow the precepts we've previously outlined for the board. This would include minimizing the number of duration of signals. It would also include avoiding nocturnal signals whenever possible. Don't transmit anything at night that you can transmit in the daytime. We've spent time talking with EWEB engineers, and I just want to present what a minimal RF infrastructure might look like in terms of my impressions is what might be possible for you to do with this technology from those conversations. In terms of usage, data uploads, meters would communicate by point to the tower rather than mesh networks. In most cases, upload frequency interval could be once every 3 days, conceivably, rather than daily. Uploads would be pushed from the meters to the tower without the tower having to ask for them, keeping the tower quieter. And these data uploads could occur during daytime hours. In terms of the demand response infrastructure, if you go there, I believe that your engineers are giving the impression that this could be done by communication between EWEB and the utilities in the home over broadband internet, since you only need 5% of the population, 10% of the population to be doing this program. And since you've got 70% penetration of broadband in the market, this would avoid the nocturnal transmissions that would happen with point to tower. And in-house connections could be by hardwired or by Wi-Fi connection, depending on the choice of the user. Kathy, it's your turn.
Kathy Carnes, followed by Bob Cassidy.
It's Cordes.
I apologize.
That's all right. I probably scribbled on my thing. I'm a doctor. We just wanted to, the Health Advisory Group wanted to just talk about some of the health implications of the approach of using the things that Paul was outlining. And we believe that with that method of implementation, we would have less, there would be fewer incidences of cancer, less incidence of cancer, sleep disturbance, and new cases of the electronic hypersensitivity in comparison to doing the mesh network or doing a demand response using the RF from towers where the towers are asking for specific information rather than having to be pushed by the home unit. We also feel that the way that was presented would be better than system uploaded usage on a daily basis, and would prefer to have it sent as infrequently as possible, depending upon what the hardware is capable of doing. Health implications of this approach include that electrosensitive individuals are less likely to experience, they still are going to experience some symptoms when usage data uploads occur, Therefore, those data pushes should be as infrequent as possible, and moving to the longer interval than 3 days should be a goal if that becomes technically available. One of the ongoing issues is exposure to neighbors' meters, and that can continue to be an issue even if an electrosensitive patient doesn't have the smart meter on his or her home. And personal opt-out does not solve that problem. So we have an underlying concern about EWEB being proactive in helping to reduce the impact on individuals' EHS that may be produced by neighboring meter transmissions to tower or to home monitors. The other distinct separate unit is multi-unit dwellings, because it's obviously very difficult to opt out when there are 20 meters on a wall, particularly for the person right next to the meters. So we would recommend postponing deployment of wireless smart meters in multi-unit dwellings until this issue can specifically be thought through, and hopefully some provision made if slow rollout or opt-in is anticipated. Perhaps the option of fiber optic communication in those settings would be possible because it would be more cost effective in that situation rather than doing it to individual homes. The other issue is we believe that persons who wish to opt out for health reasons should not be prevented from doing so by financial reasons. So they should not be penalized financially for staying with a non-radio frequency transmitting meter technology. There should not be a financial disincentive or financial punishment for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Next up, Mr. Bob Cassidy, former Commissioner Cassidy, welcome back, and then Artie Gillett, if I pronounced that right. Bob?
Bob Cassidy, 1401 East 27th. Your job as commissioners, of course, is to look at two things: the effect of something like this on the financial arrangements of the EWEB, and also the effect of it on the customers. I realize that this has been studied for a long time, well, by the staff, not necessarily by the commissioners, and I can testify to that. It was mentioned a number of times, but not studied. When concerns came up about it, the reason given was that people could always opt out. But there was never a study of how this was going to affect customers in terms of who was going to pay for the meter reading if they opted out. And now suddenly we have a new thing coming in, the opt-in. This is supposed to give incentives for those who decide to go into the meter reading. This is not a long-term plan. This is a 1 or 2 month plan to opt in. There is no mention of what effect this is going to have on the customers. The assumption is we will have 2 tiers of rates. So the question I ask is, what is the cost to the customer who decides not to opt in? It's a matter of indirectly opting out. It may be a very minor difference, but I think it's something that should be looked at. It's part of your concern of how this whole plan affects the customers. I'm really impressed by all of the testimony here tonight. This is marvelous. I think it's really good.
Thank you, Bob. Up next, Artie Gillett, followed by Karen Olch.
Yes, my name is Artie Gillard, 214 West 27th in Eugene. If smart meters are so wonderful, I find it curious that EWEB has made no concerted effort to inform their customers of the issues concerning privacy and opt-out costs. Is this informed consent? Would your customers want to know that EWEB will have to turn over any information gathered about what people are doing in their homes to the government through national security letters, third-party principal, and possibly the outright complicity of EWEB without the consent or the knowledge of their customers? I suggested that you watch the movie
Take back your power.
Take back your power, but I suggested you watch the movie The Lives of Others. There was a very wealthy community in Germany, probably the most advanced cultural society in Germany in the 1930s, and they said it can't happen here. I suggest you vote 0. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Karen Olch, followed by Lisa Marie DeVince.
Hi, my name is Karen Olch. I live in Ward 1, and I thank you for the opportunity to submit comment on your potential installation of smart meters. I realize sitting here and listening to endless public comment isn't probably the most fun thing in your life, but thank you. I've been a resident of Eugene for 9 years, and I consider myself a level-headed, non-reactionary type of person. I educate myself and I do research, and I come to conclusions based on looking at things from many angles. That's what I aspire to, and I tend to be more cautious maybe of things that come in sort of like a cheery public relations package or something that honestly, I mean, that's just how marketing works, and how any business that wants to sell a product, that's how they're going to package it. It's just the way the world of marketing is. So my main question to you all as you consider this is, what are the benefits of installing these meters? I've researched the meters and I've come up with a rather long list of the potential or real, i.e. documented negative effects of installing them. And some of these, in the interest of time, I'm just going to outline them, are the biggest one for me is documented biological and health risks of EMF, electromagnetic frequency radiation, and that there are peer-reviewed scientific studies that EMF radiation causes a variety of negative health effects and diseases, and I have personal experience with this in my own family, with a family member who doesn't live here, but definitely has suffered from this kind of thing. And along with those documented negative health implications comes the legal implications of those risks, and one of my questions is, who would be responsible for litigation? And since EWEB is a publicly owned utility, does that mean that that litigation would fall in the lap of ratepayers? That's a question I have. Documented rise in electric rates in places where these meters have been installed. And in this regard, I feel like you all have a fiduciary responsibility to us as ratepayers to not do anything that would increase our electric rates. And in terms of energy use, what I've read indicates that they actually require the use of more electricity. I need to read more on that, but they don't seem to show energy savings, and so that's a big question to me. The safety concerns, that they've been documented cases of them catching fire, and they're not approved by underwriters' laboratories, and because of this, there's no guarantee that insurance companies would cover damages if there were a fire that was caused by a smart meter. And other people have spoken to the threat of privacy and violation of Fourth Amendment rights, so I'm not going to go into that, but thank you. And I love my meter reader. I don't want her to lose her job. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Up next is Bill Evans, followed by Matt Nilsson. And Matt, could you take the seat up next to the podium, please? Did I not? Was that? That was Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
I did, and I didn't mean to do that. Lisa Marie Nilsson.
I'm ready for you.
I'm ready for you.
Confusing you for a second. Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you.
I did not mean to skip over you. It happens about once every 4 minutes.
Lisa Marie DeVince, South Eugene. As a mediator and psychological therapist, I have taken an oath, do no harm. I ask the same of you. Do no harm. Protect our owner ratepayers. The light was better before. Protect our owner ratepayers from negative health effects. We've heard a lot about that already. From unexpected cost overruns, from meter obsolescence and replacement needs based on that, and from inevitable costly lawsuits that have been shown to take place in other areas. Do no harm. Protect our community from a long, drawn-out fight that's dividing our community right now and will only divide it further the more educated people get. I have been coming to these meetings for 3 to 4 months now. How many more people are here right now, for those of us who have been here? We're just growing. We're growing with concern. We really need you. We need you to do no harm. Protect our public utility and yourselves as legally responsible elected officials. Protect EWEBs and your reputation and your legacy as public servants. Do not take this burden on in your watch. Many board members in other public utilities are voting for moratoriums, and I ask that you make up your mind now, tonight, fresh with the input of these representatives of our community who have come out, many of whom aren't speaking but are here for this reason, to listen and witness this. Please vote for a prudent and wise moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Marie. Next up is Bill Evans, followed by Matt Nelson. And we have many more speakers to go. Please refrain from clapping between those who provide testimony. Bill?
My name is Bill Evans. I'm from Ward 2. And what gets me most is that we seem to be proceeding with something that we are not sure is safe. That means throwing the precautionary principle just out the window. And that's a daunting prospect, just to see that happen. I want to know why that's happening. Why would we charge into something that we're not sure is safe? Are we just cowboys and cowgirls and shoot 'em up? I'm even concerned about the arrangement we have here. The owners of EWEB is coming to EWEB's board and pleading not to do this in large measure. Why aren't you coming to us and asking us for permission to consider the possibility of smart meters? Why isn't it turned around? There's so much evidence of the harm that these machines can do, not just to people, to the whole ecology. Everything moving, living here is subject to 1 billion times the base level of radio frequency that was happening before our technologies took over. How can that not? Why do we even want to consider adding to that soup? It's huge already. We should be going the other way. At least thinking about it, at least delaying and thinking. If there's any doubt at all, we should not proceed. Please consider it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Matt Nelson, followed by Cindy Allen.
I am Matt Nelson. Steve Meitel is my commissioner for my ward. Also, John Simpson as my at-large. We're connected to both of you. I do think it's ironic that the commissioners don't heed this advice and listen to this public input. If approved, you will be listening and watching everything that we do in Eugene through these meters. You, the commissioners of EWEB, have an opportunity tonight. An opportunity to come out smelling like a rose from the situation of EWEB's own making. You've helped bring citizens of all stripes in Eugene together, from ultra-conservative to new age liberal and everything in between, together for various reasons. And this coalition has grown because we are aware and we are educated about smart meters. The common thread, we do not want it. Many boards and other public utilities are voting for moratoriums, and I ask you, the board members, choose option 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next up is Cindy Allen and Patricia Hoover. After that.
Cindy Allen, South Eugene. In regards to having an indefinite moratorium on the smart meter, there's much to be hopeful for this evening. I'm grateful to the hundreds of opposition groups that exist. I'm grateful to the thousands who have shared their negative smart meter comments and experiences on the internet. People seem to agree on one thing: they don't want one. And they certainly don't want a worldwide smart meter grid with all of its security risk. I'm very grateful to Josh Del Sol, the producer of Take Back Your Power. This 2-year-in-the-making documentary features the former Prime Minister of British Columbia, the state attorney generals of Illinois and Massachusetts, the former director of the CIA, several doctors, and too many others to name. Another major film about the smart meter agenda is soon to be released. Here in Eugene, we still have our working analog meters. We don't have the problems of other areas. Fountain, Colorado citizens got signatures to put a recall of their smart meters on the November 2014 ballot. We don't have the class action lawsuits that California or Washington or British Columbia have. Concerns cited include health, security, fires, illegal entry, fraud. The smart meter is brought in under the disguise of saving money, but rates go up, way up, when it's installed. Commissioners, in regards to the $26 million smart meter contract, I think you were misled about the benefits, but that can no longer be said. You've had time to study the large amounts of negative information. You've watched the documentary Take Back Your Power, and you've researched the reasons for the class action lawsuits. There is a worldwide petition calling for an immediate investigation of the smart meter agenda. There are so many questions and concerns about the smart meter. One of the main questions that everyone is asking is why this untested technology, with its many obvious flaws, is being forced on people who do not want it.
Thank you, Cindy. Next up is Patricia Hoover, followed by Robin Irish.
I live in North Eugene. I spent the first 18 years of my life being exposed to radiation without my permission and without my knowledge. And this smart meter campaign feels very similar to that piece of my life. People in Eugene don't even know about the smart meter hazards. Just the mobilization of these citizen groups are slowly getting the word out. But you have not offered us, meaning the general citizens of Eugene, information about what smart meters really are, what they're really for. As long as the health effects and the security effects are in question, we, meaning you commissioners representing all of us as ratepayers and citizens, you really need to exercise the precautionary principle and look at the negatives before you force these smart meters on the people of this community. It's imperative that the precautionary principle be used as it is in other areas of our society. I strongly urge you to call a moratorium on the smart meter installations. And I personally do not want a smart meter in my home in any way, shape, or form. I cannot have one more piece of radiation in my life to impair my health any more than it already has been. So I urge you, moratorium on the smart meters.
Thank you, Patricia. Up next, Robert Irish, followed by Laura Ohanian.
I'm Robin Irish from West Eugene, and I have an industrial property over there, and I just realized, hearing the gentleman earlier, that my meter was also changed out about 3 or 4 years ago, and it must be very daunting for Mr. Gray to come in as general manager and to really want to bring Eugene onto part of the technological cutting edge. And I am one of the late bloomers here, being caught up with work and doing everything else, and have not done my homework real thoroughly until just this week. And I'm saying, I know a lot of people, if I was to go house to house over in West Eugene, that would also start to wake up. And that really tells me that there really hasn't been enough work done out there in the world to take all the research and to really sift through all the lawsuits, all the health issues, and say, do we really need to go down this path? And as a publicly voted in utility board, it certainly seems that the public is saying, we don't need to go on this cutting edge of technology right now. We are doing just fine where we are. We don't believe that it's going to help the profit help the financial stability of EWEB, and we certainly have a lot of concerns that in fact it will impact us. And then, as somebody else said earlier, what happens with lawsuits that came up? Who ends up the public is going to end up fronting, taking on the financial burdens of all those suits. So many board members and other public utilities are voting for moratoriums, and I ask that you, as publicly elected commissioners, also choose option 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. You were Robin, right?
Yes.
Next up is Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura Ohanian, West Eugene. I wasn't really prepared to speak tonight, so I'm going to let all the articulate people who have come before and will come after me fill in. I would just like to request an indefinite moratorium on this technology. From what I have researched on this, I can't really see much benefit for me or the community. The potential of a global cyber grid just fills me with fear and loathing. The additional EMFs, radiation. I mean, I don't use a cell phone. I do have a couple of wireless things in my house that I curse every day. I'm sorry that I have them. We are a culture of convenience. But the amount of additional radiation that is going to be generated by these meters is frightening. The health effects, we don't really know about them because the technology is relatively new, so we don't have all those years of research to look at, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence of people not doing well with the additional radiation. I wish we didn't have cell towers all over the place. I think conservation is the way to go. I think this is going to increase rates, as it has in so many communities. Please, do what is right for our community and our people, and not buy into this global surveillance state. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Up next to testify, Lisa Arkin, followed by Leila Trope. And Leila, could you please take the seat up next to the podium?
Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm in Steve Mitel's ward. And I'd like to talk to you about an issue regarding smart meters that hasn't been raised tonight, and that is the equity and fairness in energy use, conservation, and rates. I think this is an issue that has not been well researched by EWEB, its staff and board. We have a heavily populated part of our community in West Eugene that, according to census maps and the mapping done by the Lane Livability Coalition, which is a quasi-governmental group of membership by City of Eugene, City of Springfield, and Lane County, this area of Eugene, West Eugene, has a greater concentration of children, 16 to 18% Latino population, more numbers of low-income families than other parts of Eugene, more children on free and reduced lunches in the schools, greater populations of elderly, and a greater concentration of disabled residents in Eugene. These are people who are less privileged, don't have options and choices, as one might assume. If one is privileged, if one has a good job, maybe even if both parents are working, maybe they can afford to have a nanny looking after the children. That's not true in other families. Smart meters are said to be helping establish energy conservation rates based on time of use pricing, and that there be surcharge pricing for bad uses during undesirable times. Well, some of these families don't have choices. They have a lot of work to do just to get their family going in the morning, to cook dinner when they get home from work, to do the laundry before they collapse in bed, getting ready for the next day of work. Maybe parents hold 2 or 3 jobs. They don't have as many choices. They're less able to make the kind of discretionary use you speak of. And whether it's opt-in or opt-out, really you're making 2 tiers of privileged rate uses and unprivileged rate uses. So I think what we need is education for all of our community, more efficient appliances and heating, retrofits, and the use of the precautionary principle to not put an additional burden on these families that may already be vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Ms. Leila Trope, followed by Eve Woodward-Shaw and Jerry Shaw. They're going to come up together.
Yeah, it's Leila Trope, I live in Springfield. I'm fascinated by this room, by the audience, by people from 3 sides of the aisle. You got intellectuals, you've got people that have studied it from a scientific viewpoint, you've got people that are looking at it from liberal and conservative. I have no notes. I came here because I'm the kind of person who says, because of what I do on a general level, I'm fully aware of the implications of when smart meters have been forced upon people in California in particular. I've watched the YouTube videos where people have been handcuffed, where people have been arrested, where people have been held at the point of a gun to put a smart meter on their house. I ask myself, what is this thing that makes a smart meter so important that a utility company would bring a sheriff with a utility employee at the point of a gun to put a meter on somebody's house? What? There's a bigger implication here. There's a way bigger implication here than ultra-low frequencies, then pinging from towers. This has to do with the fact that people need more information. I personally don't think, and I could be wrong, you can tell me if I'm wrong, if there's any one of the people that I'm looking at here on this board who has complete knowledge, not only from the financial, from the legal, from the issue of the United Nations and how they want us to all be bought into the fact that some people need to do less with their money and their appliances, you need your life controlled, you need some rolling brownouts, you need to change out your cash for clunker appliances. There's something else going on here. Eugene doesn't need to be cutting edge on every wacko item that comes along. I'm sorry. Why don't we finish one issue at a time? We got, don't even get me started on the wacko issues in Eugene. But all I'm saying is that if there is in fact a zero option that says there needs to be more information, this is where it needs to be started. And I thank you for having these opportunities for people to come and speak. I hope for more of them, and I'll be here.
Thanks, Leila. Up next, Eve
Okay.
and Jared.
Should I go to the table here? Well, it's a kind of simple library. I appreciate the clock, the nice clock. Just amount of time. Good, I have things to put in my smart meter. Hertz is measured in cycles per second. 60 hertz is 60 cycles per second. Kilohertz is 1,000. Oh,
Can you please pull the microphone up right next to you because our next speaker needs to hear.
Oh, it's time and stuff you probably already know.
Can you bend the microphone down to point it at your mouth?
Okay, is
Perfect.
that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I was talking about, like,
We'll give you some extra time.
oh, you're sweet, thank you, because I was running out of time. Hertz is measured in cycles per second, 60 hertz is 60 cycles per second. Kilohertz is 1,000, followed by megahertz, 1,000,000, and gigahertz, 1,000,000,000 cycles per second. Humans thrive on only 39 hertz, and beyond that, damage is going to start. The impact on cells and DNA is especially vulnerable to electromagnetic fields of all kinds. The electromagnetic field is measured in milligauss. The Swedish government research indicates adverse health effects at the level of 2.0 milligauss. Now, this is my smart meter. If this was a real smart meter, wireless smart meters have an omnidirectional radiation field from 1 to 5 miles or more. This meter is now radiating through your desk, through your body, and now down at a frequency to damage your healthy cells, maybe even breaking them open, and starting to break up your DNA. It's cumulative, as well as other untold biological damage, almost instantaneously through the window behind you, across the river, and any buildings within range, affecting anyone across the river. Biological entities, animals, trees, and more. Radio frequency fields, microwave radiation has found to weaken also any structures in its path. It's biological, it has a radiation, and it goes through all of that. Oh, you all look so bored. Okay, here it is. Everyone behind me is also receiving this strong radiation and should be very concerned, especially if they are pregnant, they have metal implants on their bodies, even dental metals such as silver mercury amalgams and gold inlays. My body has a metal plate and a lot of metal screws. People with pacemakers, prosthetic devices, and wireless insulation pumps have had medical problems.
You can continue for another 20 or 30 seconds.
Oh, okay, well, there's lots of other things. It's turning off breathing machines and doing brain implants for Alzheimer's and also all the things people have at home, all their home equipment and stuff is not working properly. And for medical things, like if there are children on it, but all around us, it's radiating. And even the people behind me and next door, right through the walls. Okay, and Census is on a new track, and they're promoting their ability to have better strength to go through walls and more powerful.
Thank you very, very much, Eve.
Thank you for letting me speak more.
You
Thank you. Okay, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Shaw. I'm going to talk about smart meters. But we have a group of people here that was elected by the people to make decisions for Eugene and for EWEB in accordance with people's will. And looks like something's gone wrong, that all these people here, normally at a meeting, we have what, maybe a quarter of that? So it looks like things aren't being done according to people's will. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Following is L. Abraham. Or perhaps Abraham L. As it's written.
Which is it? Oh, L, I see, that's right. I just put my last initial.
Your last name is L.
Right.
Hi, Mr. L.
Hi.
You're the last one to testify.
Oh, good. I think it's appropriate that I'll be speaking about power here. I saw the movie Take Back Your Power, and so I thought to myself, how am I going to do that? So I checked out EWEB's bylaws. And I didn't find anything in EWEB's bylaws that states that the people of Eugene have the final approval of any recommendations or policies the Board of Commissioners may want to implement, as in the case of dangerous digital electrical meters, for instance. What makes this a, quote, public utility if the people have no way to ensure that this board acts in what the people believe to be in their best interest? We are all still at the mercy of this Board of Commissioners. For this to truly be a public utility, the people must have the last word on any policy important to the health, safety, and well-being of the community. To that end, I strongly recommend that the bylaws of EWEB be amended to make this truly a public utility in the full meaning and power of that title. An issue as important as digital meters should be decided by a vote of the people of Eugene. There should not be any reason why the people should have to organize, struggle, and feel insecure as to the outcome of all their hard work in trying to convince this board or any other government agency to implement policies that are in the best interest of the people. The combined knowledge and wisdom in this room right now is at least as great, if not greater, than this Board of Commissioners. You would do well to listen to them and place a moratorium on digital meters. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Abraham. Please refrain from questions to allow all members of the public to participate. Joshua Parker.
Hi, my name is Joshua Parker, and I'm in the south side, so I believe Steve Mytel is my trustee. First, I want to address something that was referenced in the previous board meeting, which was the discussion of radios in reference to smart meters. And I want to make it clear to the board members and also to the public that this references radios goes back to early history well, industrial early history as far as radios go. Radios are not transmitting devices. Smart meters are, and radios. We have trust in radios, and I think it does a disservice to the public to refer smart meters as radios, because these are transmitters. When you tune in a radio to a radio station and listen to a program, there is no transmitter on your radio, and that's a very important distinction. So obviously people have talked about the public health issues and the privacy issues, and the public sentiment here is really clear. You board members have now heard public testimony from 20 people, myself included, who wish to recommend that you, board members, vote for a moratorium. That's 85%. There was actually only 2 people that came up here and spoke in favor. There were a few others, about 5 people, who discussed some questionable topics and were unclear on their exact direction for the board. But we have 85%, and that's the majority here of people who request a moratorium. So they've echoed this request. And you guys, as stewards of our public opinion, specifically, you should make the right choice today and choose option 0, the moratorium. And be advised that option 0 is a third choice, which simply says that there will be at least a 10-year moratorium on implementing the AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure, i.e. smart meters. Now, I wish to make you aware that as public stewards, elected officials of this community, you may be personally liable if you make the inappropriate decision. It's your fiduciary responsibility to make the appropriate decision based on what the community is requesting and what the public is requesting. So it's now publicly declared and on public record how the public wishes you to vote on this issue, and expect you to vote today to choose option 0.
Thank you,
Choosing
Joshua.
option 0 will avoid all potential litigation and future issues.
Thank you, Joshua. Are there any other members of the audience who wish to provide testimony at this time? Yes. Would you please state your name for the record when you get to the podium? And our staff will record that. I can write it down.
My name's Jane Catra. I'm a resident of Southeast Eugene. I have a PhD in public health, and I've taught public health at the University of Oregon and McLean Community College for many years, and I was also a public servant on the Lane County Health Advisory Committee. I've also been a past member of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and I think other people have brought up to you that both the World Health Organization and this American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and I'll also say the Environmental Protection Agency, for whom my now deceased partner worked for many, many years, has done lots of research showing the adverse effects of this type of radiation that you're considering subjecting us all to. It would just amaze me if you would ignore what scientists are saying. The World Health Organization, representing over 13 countries and over 30 scientists, saying caution is necessary. It's definitely carcinogenic potential, and that non-thermal radiation, as this has adverse health effects, and they're just not completely understood at this time. So as elected officials, I cannot imagine that you would subject us to such unknowns. On another level, I would just be amazed that you would subject us to the surveillance. In the last month, we found out that Google, that all of the email providers have had to turn over, email records, and that phone companies have to turn over phone records. It's going to be the same for this. Please don't do this to us. Don't voluntarily signed us up for this type of surveillance. I'm a low-income person, I'm on Medicare, I'm a widow, I've had breast cancer. I do not want to have to pay to opt out of something like this. I feel that, you know, please serve us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify at this time? Seeing none, public testimony period